Hello, and welcome to another episode of House of Decline. It has been a while because I've been having a weird month, but we're back. And we are back with a wonderful friend of mine, a wonderful journalist, editor, podcaster, programmer. He's been on the show before, and we're back with a wonderful character that we've analyzed. And now he's back. But it's Eric Wickham, everyone. Eric Wickham, how are you?
Hey, Alex, thank you for having me on the show. This is a blast. I'm a big fan of House of Decline. I think I said that last time I was on too, but this is the best. I'm gonna figure out how to talk at some point.
Yeah, you're talking just fine. Thank you for your wonderful praise. I'm always into praise, never enough. That's why we're podcasters, because we lavish attention. It's not enough that we should be journalists. We should be podcasters as well and get, the parasocial attention, right?
Mm-hmm. I want people to not only appreciate me for my work, I want people to just love me unconditionally for who I am as a person,
Yeah. But I mean, it's funny you say that because the character we're analyzing very much has that wanton, pleasing quality to him. And this is, of course, the food professor who we've talked about before. I don't know why, because normally, you're my friend on the Canadian politics beat. Normally, I'm not that dialed into Canadian politics, but this guy is so specifically milquetoast that I have a strong fascination with the food professor. Who is the food professor, Eric?
Okay, so before we get into it, how much does your audience know about the food professor? How often?
I don't talk about the food professor that often. One time we did an episode on the Patreon. There's a Patreon episode where we talked about him before, but some recent events have come to light that have brought him back up in current social standing. And I wanted to reevaluate him again because he's like the perfect empty blank suit. He's like this great shibboleth for our times of utter emptiness, and that sort of glad-handing, polite personality, even down to the name, the food professor,
Mm-hmm.
offering some sort of light authority or something like that. There's something about this guy's attitude which is very offensive. So nobody knows anything about the food professor. What's square one? What do we need to know about Sylvain Charlebois, the food professor?
All right, so I'm gonna start with a real top-down elevator pitch for who this guy is. Sylvain Charlebois is an odd Canadian professor who is some sort of media authority that is used on every remaining Canadian news channel and newspaper and radio station, etc., as the de facto authority on food. Right? It is a specifically Canadian anomaly that's going on. This is something that has been created by our media. Mm-hmm. We have the guy that talks about food, and that guy's name is the food professor, which is stupid. That's a stupid thing that we have that. But I don't know. I would be speculating as to why this came about. But I'm assuming, as someone who has done some chase producing work in the past, Sylvain is very good at picking up the phone and saying, yes, I'll come on your show. And then he goes and he talks about the supply chain, and he goes and tells everybody why, it's the supply chain's fault that things are so expensive. He never talks about, the record profits specific companies are making, mm-hmm. or, the fact that the rise in price of food items very largely outstrips what other things are being or the prices on other items are, right?
It's rising at a much food is rising at a much higher rate of inflation. I don't know about other jurisdictions, but in Canada it's crazy because our food industry is especially monopolized. You can just point to the name Galen Weston, right? Galen Weston, who Sylvain Charlebois is he's an acolyte of, basically. You could say he is, he gets Loblaws bucks, right? I'm not making that up, right?
Yeah. So essentially, this is actually a story that our good friend Jeremy Appel broke a year ago, which Sylvain did not love having it in the public, I don't think, because Jeremy got a bunch of DMs from Sylvain. But apparently Sylvain got some funding for some grad students from the Weston Family Foundation. I think the amount was about 60 grand. And I mean, like, that is like a good reason to discount the stuff that he says. But I also think that he's wrong a lot of the time. And I feel like that gets lost in the mix a lot, because the thing that he always seems to care about is the supply chain. That's what he's an authority on. He's written a lot about the supply chain. And I think he's got like a very narrow focus that a lot of academics have, where it's like, the thing I know about is the thing that is the cause of everything. It's like, it's not corporate greed. It's not inflation. It's not, you know, it's
lack
not
of centralization and lack
of competition. You know, like, as you mentioned before, there's only there's like 5 major grocery stores in the country. They own a majority of the market share of groceries in Canada, which is stupid. Like, it is like a very, again, this is another Canadian issue. We got like 5 cell phone carriers. They're also like, they also kind of like Venn diagram into our media companies, like our energy companies, our mining concerns. Like, there's only so many companies in every single industry, and it's always like 6 dudes at a table, you know? Like, it's a problem.
Pretty extreme concentration of power, and Sylvain Charlebois is one of the people that maintains that extreme concentration of power. Specifically, I mean, that's what the supply chain is for. His entire beat is like, you can't have nice things, or the prices on food deserve to be this high because of supply chain, right? You need to go without. You know, he's always taught, which is why, you know, and I was talking with Eric about this before, you know, his entire thing is you got to go without, right? Got to edge. You got to edge your food. You know, you got to edge it, right? You know, you can't be having it all at once. You got to take your time. Slow like with the food, you piggy. You know, maybe you are having too much. Maybe you are having too much food at any one point, which is why you got to slow it up. You can look at pictures of food, maybe look at some nice pictures of food, maybe look at it a lot while having like messages saying you can do it. That's right, folks. I'm saying that Sylvain Charlebois is the food gooner.
Is this what we were talking about earlier?
This is what we were talking. This is going to be the name of the episode. Eric's a real journalist. Eric's a real person. He didn't think of this. This is to his protestations. I'm calling the episode the Food Gooner, because that's what I'm calling this guy from now on, is the Food Gooner. Because I think he wants you to goon food for Galen Weston and be like, Daddy, I love all the food you get. Gruel. Thank you for the gruel. And you ask Galen Weston for more, and he's like, more. And, you know, it's no good. But yeah, it's all about the Food Gooner. Is all about the maintenance of this unjust system. It's what I'm getting at here.
I'm worried about, like, or not worried about, I'm weighing how I should respond to the new nickname.
The Food Gooner? You can still call him the Food Professor. I'm going to call him the Food Gooner. You can call him Sylvain. You can call him the Food Professor. My personal nickname, and what I am going to call him from now on, because I'm tied to less seriousness than you, is the Food Gooner. But I will drag you down with me. I will drag you down into the depths of Canadian alt media.
Well, you know, that's fine. I never had much of a career to begin with, but I think
no, it's going to get bigger.
I'm sure that's very nice of you to say, but I'm sure, you know, Sylvain, who seems to have a good finger on the pulse of anybody who's ever talking about him, will probably hear this and not appreciate it.
Well, he's gonna goon to it. That's what he's gonna do. You know, he's gonna because he knows all about withholding, and then he's gonna strike. You know. Oh, something I should also mention for people that don't know about Sylvain Charlebois. He's from Quebec, but he's lived on the East Coast for a while and has a very neutral sort of received Canadian English pronunciation with like a little hint of Quebec is still in there. So he talks like a Quebec speak and spell a lot of the time, or sort of like, you know, he has a very uncanny quality to his voice because he is supposed to be sort of like a neutral character as well.
He is like very much like a cartoonish figure in a lot of people's minds. You know what I mean? Like, he is like a talking head. He's like a little box on the screen. I find him very fascinating personally. I'm I'm like waiting for the day for him to like contact me and be like, I heard what you said on House of Decline.
He'll get, I mean, he's, because you yourself have become part of the food news cycle, right? You've been developing some food programs yourself, some food news programs.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's part of a data-driven reporting project I'm doing for the Hoser, which is a local publication up here in Toronto. I've been tracking the price of food in the city, just tracking food staples, seeing how it moves in line with inflation, and the work has gotten me a little bit of attention. I ended up on the CBC, which is, for your American listeners, the Canadian public broadcaster. CBC radio, so like it was a big deal for me as a radio guy, and like the last time I was in the studio, I was a squeaky little intern, just like kind of watching people do the work, and then this time I was like being interviewed in the studio, which is very cool for me.
Yeah.
But I mean, the last couple months I've been starting to get named the new food professor, which is something that I'm not wholly on board with, but
well, yeah, you're the food genius. I've been calling you the food genius versus the food gooner. It's the two, you know, that's what's going to happen. The food genius versus the food gooner. It's going to come down to heads, you know.
Yeah, inside you are two food related experts.
Yeah.
The food genius and the other guy.
Yeah, the other guy. Yeah, say it, Eric. No, you don't have to say it. The food genius does not need to sully himself. You know, I am the food jester, and I will sully myself by saying the words "the food gooner." But he's a gooner also in the sense that he's a goon. He's a goon for the corporate food merchants. You know, the food overlords. You know, he's a big henchman for them, which is what I don't like.
He's a goon in another way, and that's that he tries to intimidate people who don't fully line up with what he's saying, or people that have gently corrected him in the past. Like, meet the wrath of the food professor. Someone sent me this the other day. It was just a tweet from Andrew Leach, who's like an economist. He teaches at the University of Alberta. He must have said something that upset the food professor, because this tweet that he shared was a picture of Andrew Leach, and then it said, I never forgot the last ones guillotined in the French Revolution were the instigators. What does go around, come around.
What?
And then it's just reposted by the food professor. And it's a picture of Andrew Leach there. And so, like, he has a habit of kind of flying off the handle when people get critical of him.
He's a little petty.
Yeah, a little bit petty. You can talk to Jeremy Appel about that. I mean, he was very convinced he was going to be facing a lawsuit from the food professor after that wonderful Substack he wrote last year, titled "Who the Fuck is the Food Professor?" Which is actually a great piece of writing. I think everybody should read it. Yeah. But the Loblaws boycott people have been dealing with the wrath of the food professor. And for anybody at home who doesn't know what's going on, Loblaws is a large grocery store in Canada. They've taken a lot of flack for having raised prices over the last couple of years, to the point where like food prices are pretty ridiculous.
Yeah. Way out of step with inflation. You know, just by any sort of even COVID inflated inflation, you know, that's out of step with. Yeah.
Yeah, and the CPI for food items was much higher than the CPI for any other item for like an extended period of time. I'd say like a period of 6 months from the end of 2022 to mid 2023. I don't need to bore you with the stats.
No, I mean, well, because that's what your project for the Hoser was. You were basically that's why I wanted you on the show and why I respect your project, because any project that compiles primary data, I think is really interesting, because that's the actual like on the ground shit. And you were tracking the food prices in real time to like, and basically giving yourself the knowledge of, okay, why is this inflation happening, and what can I adjust it to, or what can I pin it to? And did you come to any conclusions on that, or was it like, the real conclusion is greed. We know why, but anything more specific than that?
Well, I mean, the project's still ongoing. It's a pretty black box finding where those things are coming from, right? You can see that inflation has cooled, and with that, the increase in prices has stabilized. But it is quite interesting that there was a summit for grocery prices in September, which the food professor was actually at. Like, he was a part of that at the on Parliament Hill.
The food summit.
Yeah, he was at the food summit with a bunch of the grocery executives.
Food Gooner. He was gooning with the gang. You know, he was at the GoonCon with the Food Goon gang.
Yeah, with ministers and grocery executives, and Sylvain was there.
Yeah, you got to get all your boys in a room, do it together. You know, put all the food on the big screen, and goon together with it. Smack your lips while food gooning.
Yeah, well, whatever happened behind closed doors is none of my business.
Yeah. Look, I know full well that gooning is an outdated reference that no one cares about by now. Everyone's tired of gooning as a thing. Oh, for people that might not know, gooning is edging. It's masturbating, but you're edging a lot. And you're also watching a lot of sick pornography while doing it. And then that's what gooning is. If you hadn't come across that term by now, which if you're listening to this podcast, you probably already know what gooning is. But I like to explain it. I like to explain it a little. So that's what they're all doing at this food summit. They're all, edging intensely to food pornography at this summit.
Yeah, well, and they were also supposed to be there to find a way of stabilizing food prices, which is like a very nice way of the government saying, like, we want to get food price increases in line with inflation because they were so out of whack for so long.
Yeah.
And I mean, God bless our like very ineffective government. What they suggested, like, they empowered the companies to come up with their own plans.
Yeah. Self-regulation.
Yeah, because businesses love making less money, right?
Yeah.
Every single one is just begging for new ways of making less money.
Yeah.
And so our government, out of fear of being called radical Marxists, let the captains of industry decide how they were going to stabilize prices. But I will say, since that summit, the price increases have gotten in line with inflation. Okay. So I mean, interesting. I don't know. Yeah. It's like one of those correlation causation things, but like, we're still stuck with the bad prices because like we're not gonna see the inverse effect happen, right? We're not gonna see grocery prices decrease at a rate twice as high as every other item, right? Like,
well, that begs the question of like, why could they have gotten away with it? Because it was just 3 years of this complete out of control inflation that people were complaining about. Was it just that the data wasn't there, or they were just getting away with it because all of the businesses reasoned like, oh, it's post-COVID, so do what you want in order to recoup your losses or whatever? Do you think it was that mentality?
I think I don't know. I have a specific impression of Canada that like people just get away with everything up here, right? Like, unless there is a high profile incident that like people can't ignore, people find a way of ignoring things up here. I don't want to paint Canada as some stupid backwater, but we are very oafish and we're very gullible people up here.
We're passive. We're passive. It is that we're not like the French. We don't protest, when stuff goes wrong, especially Ontario. You're like, oh, you're screwing us for food prices, Galen. Oh, I guess we got to take it. I guess we got to I guess that's it. Oh, no, Galen. Oh, geez, we're from Ontario.
Yeah, like we are suckers, really, here. Like, we're marks. And it is one of those things where I don't want to give the impression that they're no longer screwing us, because like the prices are still out of whack of where they should be. In terms of inflation, right? Like, they're still making a decent profit on what they're selling us, because prices for food increased way above where they should have. I'm repeating myself, but I'm still
it has to be said, because I'm not sure about other jurisdictions, but in Canada it was nuts, to the point where, I mean, the other reason why I want to do this episode is because it's truly universal. Like, everyone is feeling the squeeze of food prices everywhere, so I say I don't know if this is in other jurisdictions, but I talk to people everywhere. It is in other jurisdictions too. This is like this universal phenomena of these fucking grocery overlords, which we don't think about it because it is such a like an anodyne, innocuous thing, which I think the Food Gooner takes advantage of. Oh, I am the food who could think of food? Vegetables and carrots. It is such a simple thing for children. How could anyone? But really, at the heart of it, it's this deeply sinister thing where they controlled the literal survival of people based on outpricing them for different types of food. Yeah.
100%. Like this is like an existential crisis, right? Like we are a captured market in that if we don't eat food, we no longer exist.
Yes, we need it. Like, we sort of need it. Yeah.
Yeah, we're kind of like, unless we have, a farm in our backyard. I don't have a backyard, so I'm kind of out of luck there. We are reliant on the handful of grocery stores in our specific area, right? And it's like, this is one of those things that I actually really dislike about Sylvain Charlebois' media persona, is that everything is about macroeconomics. Everything's about the supply chain. Everything is about like, these suppliers, like they're charging too much. It's like the main story here is that human beings need to eat, and the cost of living is getting exorbitant.
Yeah,
and like we're all feeling the crunch. I'm sure there's a handful of people who are not feeling the crunch listening to this, being like, I don't know what you're talking about. Things are bad. I mean, food insecurity in Ontario, which is where we both live, is at. I think a report came out 2022 saying 18% of families faced food insecurity in 2022. That's like 1 in 5 kids. That's bad.
Is that worse than years previous?
Yes. Yeah. It is not a good number. You know what I mean?
1 in 5. Yeah, 1 in 5 kids going without seems like 1 in 5 seems like a lot. I don't know about I mean, any number is a lot, but 1 out of every 5 kids is like a little orphan. A little Oliver Twist. I don't want 1 in 5 kids being Oliver Twist.
Yeah, me neither. And like, I don't know, I live beside a food bank. Like I see a food bank line up every morning, and I'll tell you, like the last 2-3 years, all I've seen is that lineup grow. Yeah. Like it extends down the block when they're serving people. That's bad. And this is the conversation about food that I think we need to have, because like everybody feels the collective outrage when they go to the grocery store and they see like a pound of strawberries for $6, which was the average price in a Loblaws in January. Not bragging.
I buy a bunch of, I go to a fancy Loblaws, so the prices are even more inflated. But $3.99 for a bunch of non-organic carrots, come on. It
upsets me so much. And like, okay, so I'd say around Easter, so it was like early April. I went into a Metro, which is another one of the.
It's supposed to be one of the cheaper ones too. One of the lower rent options,
I think they try and like stack themselves up as like a comparable to Loblaws.
Really? They're not there. They're not.
No, they don't have the exposed brick inside the building.
Yeah, they don't have the bougie affectations as Loblaws. The Loblaws do. Loblaws is like our Whole Foods.
Yeah, but it's there's like this weird thing with their CEO, Galen Weston, just to talk about Loblaws for a second. Mm-hmm. Their CEO tried to be like this folksy billionaire who's just like, I'm just like one of you guys. He always wore like a 3/4 crew neck thing where he like zip up sweater. Yeah. And he's just like, I'm just like one of you guys. And then everybody just like, we hate you actually, because food is so expensive. And now he's sort of taken a back seat on their marketing stuff. Which is probably a good idea. A little like, I think the damage was done though, because like when this Loblaws boycott that came around needed someone to focus on when people were mad at grocery stores. They focused on the Westons, right? Like they focused on Loblaws and the Loblaws affiliated stores. He made himself a bit of a target, is what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah, he Streisand. I mean, when you hold yourself out to be really good, and then you're a billionaire, so obviously you're not. You get, it's like Bill Gates being associated with Jeff Epstein. It's like that other shoe is going to drop eventually, right? People are going to realize, the guy who controls whether we live or die is bad, actually. The guy who has somehow accumulated the power for the literal things that we put into our body to keep us alive. Yeah, it's bad that he controls all of that. One guy shouldn't control all of that,
Yeah, well, like the parent company too is like getting into healthcare and stuff, and they're on the board of like of at least one hospital, which is a little scary. Like
Yeah.
that's not exactly what you want to. You don't want
Yeah.
captains of industry in charge of too many things in your life. I think.
Yeah, they're going to take all the MAID patients and turn them into cheap meat. Uh, just
Oh my God! Don't say that. Well, like there's this other weird thing that I'm noticing because I'm trying to find the cheapest item in each store.
Oh no, it's Soylent Soylent Green.
Listen,
Soylent Galen.
Soylent Galen.
Yeah.
The cheapest ground beef in Loblaws and No Frills, which is like the discount Loblaws, is several dollars cheaper a kilogram than in Metro, and like. I mean, that product isn't available in every single Loblaws. And a lot of times you'll see that it's sold out. And maybe it's just because it's such a good deal. But it's like when you say things like that, it's concerning.
Yeah, the Galen Green. Yeah, you don't want the Galen Green. I don't know. What are they doing with the MAID patients? Do we know? We should.
There's no way of knowing, really.
I mean, but we talk about this, the very, because Canada, that's what it's like. It presents as innocuous, but it's deeply dark and sinister, which is it has that that thing with the MAID thing where it's just like, did you remember I'm referring to, of course, the medically assisted induced dying, the one where which I was initially in favor of. I thought, if you have a terminal illness or whatever, you got 6 months of pain left, sure, you get to take your own life. That seems like a pretty good idea, right?
Yeah, and empowering.
Empowering, right? And all the detractors were like, do you really trust the government to kill people? And I'll be like, nah, it's fine. And then I did that. I trusted the Canadian government to kill people. And then they immediately started using it on non-terminal people and pitching it to non-terminally ill people. And, people with very curable stuff, with like depression and stuff like that. Yeah. Who were like, I want to kill myself. It was like, oh, well, you'll be a burden on the state. Try killing yourself, maybe.
Yeah, that is not a thing that the state should be allowed, or people that are working as medical practitioners should be allowed to suggest as an option. This
people were suggesting MAID. Doctors were suggesting, or like at care homes with people, they were suggesting MAID. People that weren't terminal, the people just that couldn't work or function in capitalism, were getting MAID suggested to them. So that's like the food profession. And the thing again is, it's like when you read, there was some big smoking gun article that came out of, I forget the author of it, but I remember one part of the article was the specific politeness of the person that was suggesting the MAID. Is like, well, this option exists. Are you telling me to kill myself? We can't tell you to do that, but we can tell you that, a lot of our depressed patients who find it can't work, they might want to consider, so yeah, that sort of politeness masking this deeply sinister thing is why I'm fascinated with this, the Food Gooner, because like he's that to a T.
Yeah, and that's like an intrinsically Canadian thing where it's a veneer of politeness and just looking out for one another, and really the thing deep down is this horrible festering evil. Yeah. And I'm not calling Sylvain an evil man. I just think that
I think he's evil. You don't have to call him evil. I'll call the Food Gooner evil. I think he's pure evil. I think he's got dead eyes, and I think he's got nothing, no heart, and no soul.
I think he's a symptom of a larger thing, which is a deeply incurious populace, a dying media industry, and I don't know. I think the nicest thing I could say about the man is he's like a mediocre academic, where he's published a thing and then he's like, this is the thing. Mm-hmm. The supply chain. This is what I care about, and this is me trying to save a little bit of professional face.
I mean, the food professor, he's not an ugly guy. I mean, that's part of the charm, is he's like vaguely classically handsome, and he has this erudition, and he has this sort of theatrical voice. Actually, coincidentally, today I was talking about a guy that reminded me very much of the food professor, which was Mike Rowe, Mike Rowe, the dirty jobs guy.
Dirty jobs guy.
Yeah. And it's the same thing, sort of like this classically handsome, more of an entertainer than he is an expert at the thing. I mean, the difference, like the food professor is actually, the food gooner does actually have a PhD in food gooning or whatever, or like, doesn't he have an economics PhD or something like that?
Yeah. And he runs the agri-food analytics lab. And like he'll get invited to grocery summits, right?
Yeah.
Like the man has the respect of his colleagues, but not.
He is credentialed, but he has this fraudster quality to him. It seems like he's like all of that pales in comparison to the fact that he's very like. It almost seems like he specifically got media trained, or like he specifically like worked himself up to be the media training sort of guy when it comes to this thing.
Yeah, I think he's built a brand really effectively. You know what I mean? Like, it's like this is what he does. Is like he gets columns published. He gets on TVs, the talking head on breakfast TV whenever they have a story about the Loblaws boycott, and he's just like, well, this boycott's not working, and it's like the third day of the boycott. And it's like this man has nothing, like he has no knowledge of how labor action works, or like he has no idea about the history of boycotts in this country. He doesn't talk about the farmers' strike in Saskatchewan. Like that's not interesting to him. He knows about the supply chain, and he thinks that the boycott people are stupid because they abuse him on that subreddit. It's a fun story, actually.
Wait, what happened? Tell me the story. That's why we're here. We're talking about the food professor stories. How did they abuse the food? How did they abuse the food gooner? The gooner's getting abused. The food's getting abused.
I got this from one of the organizers. So this is a firsthand account, but apparently they were looking for just like a couple experts to do AMAs for the subreddit "Our Loblaws is out of control," I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
And they're the sort of principal organizers of the Loblaws boycott, which is still ongoing, although it's supposed to only go for the month of May. They've extended it. Someone reached out to Sylvain asking for him to do an AMA, and then apparently he said, "I'll do it, but if anyone calls me a shill for Loblaws, I'm out of there."
Okay. And predictably,
someone said something. I don't think the AMA happened.
Yeah.
And then shots were fired, and now there's a dedicated subreddit of like 90,000 people making memes about this guy. Kind of
90,000 people.
Yeah. The Loblaws is out of control subreddit is very popular.
It's that popular, I guess, because it's such a universe. Everyone fucking hates Loblaws, fucking hates Galen Weston and this mealy-mouthed asshole who's constantly carrying the water for this, life-stealing industry.
Yeah, well, it is like. I think grocery shopping is like a really atomizing experience. I think like going to the store, looking at the prices, like picking things out all on your own is like an infuriating and atomizing experience. You look at it, you know what your budget is.
The pop music going on in the background.
Yeah, exactly. Some Taylor Swift song is playing. Shout out to the Swifties.
Yeah, looking at Swiss chard while going, haters gonna hate.
Yeah.
And you feel like, it used to be Muzak, that you'd hear in the grocery store, but somehow like the high energy pop music is worse because it's you're having this mundane experience while this thing with this very upbeat thing is in the background. You're like, okay.
Bring back Herb Alpert.
Yes, more Herb Alpert grocery store. I bring back the Muzak to grocery stores. That was less alienating than BB Rexa or whatever. Yeah,
but like to my point though, like I think that people did not realize how upset everybody else was about the prices because like this thing affects all of us, but on like a one-to-one basis, right? Like we have a personal relationship with the grocery store that is fucking up our budget, right? And it's like, I mean, I don't think the food affordability crisis would be as big of a crisis if housing here wasn't so.
Yes, the twin pillars,
yeah. Like, I mean, what's an average bedroom in Toronto right now?
2,300 for like a one bedroom, I suppose.
It's beautiful.
If you're lucky, that's like at the lower end,
Yeah, and it's like we have stagnant wages. Like people aren't seeing wage growth, and housing is only getting more expensive and food prices are going up. And it's like, I do think that people feel like they have a tiny bit more control about food prices because then they can just choose to go to a different grocery store, although it's like owned by the same 5 people.
Yeah.
Unless you live like in a cool neighborhood. But like, I think this boycott's so fascinating, specifically because it was everyone waking up to the fact that, oh, everyone's mad about this.
Yeah.
And they joined a little club about it. And I'm not sure it's going to actually like affect Loblaws, not their bottom line, but I'm sure it scared them.
It's I mean, it's a monopoly. It's like hard to affect their bottom line. It's not a monopoly, but it's a sankopoly or a duopoly. They're not meaningfully. There's no meaningful competition to Loblaws, so they can do whatever they want.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, well, their competitors can all fit around the dinner table, right?
Yeah.
Like they're like major competitors. And so like, I mean, they don't
fix prices. We don't know they fix prices, but they probably, they can if they could easily do so if they wanted to.
I would prefer not to comment on that, I think.
Yeah.
But
no, we can't say that they do. No, I'm not saying that they fix it. I mean, the thing is, they did. We know at least in the last 10 years they did fix prices. They did do bread fixing.
Bread prices. Yeah, and they got caught for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The McKinsey intern. He was working for a company that was fixing bread prices. That was Loblaws. And like, listen, like that is like one of many things on a list that Loblaws has done to deserve the ire of the Canadian population. That being said, I mean, we would be so screwed if we lost Loblaws in terms of like a grocer. Like, there's like a lot of towns that would not have.
Yeah, we're dependent on them.
Like we're hostages, like in more than one industry. Like we are dependent on the handful of guys that provide a specific service.
Yeah, like
we're so screwed here. I like whenever I end up talking about Canada, like as like a the zoom out, like Canada as a concept, it's just so funny how little works here. Like everything seems so bad when you look at it like on a completely zoomed out scale like this.
Well, because I think one of the other big problems of Canada is you're always thinking of it geographically as larger than the U.S., but it's very small population wise. So I guess like, oh yeah, like how many grocery store chains would there be in California? 5. I guess that sort of makes sense if you start thinking of Canada like that, as a smaller entity than like this. But we aren't, and it shouldn't be like that. Not in smaller jurisdictions. It should either be like I mean, I guess we're commies, so our solution would be like the government buys all the fucking Loblaws backs and turns them all into IGAs or whatever, turns them all into like farmer co-ops or something like that.
Yeah, price choppers.
Yeah, price. Yeah, actually, yeah, government doing price buyback, chopping the Loblaws choppers.
It's a great name for a nationalized grocery chain. It's like our government would never do anything cool like that. But like they'll like toy with the idea of bringing in one extra competitor. Yeah, like that'll
how though? Like, would they subsidize the extra competitor to get over the opportunity cost of starting a fucking grocery chain? Like, how do you do that? How do you start a competing grocery chain to a gigantic mammoth? You can't offer better prices. Can you?
I don't know where they would source the produce, right? Like, I think they would have to. I'm assuming what our government would do, the same way that they did with the Volkswagen battery plant, is like heavily subsidize the operation of the thing, or like the installation, the building of these specific like spaces to actually build the batteries. And then at the end of the day, like we'd have like another mediocre grocery chain. Like we'd end up like with an Aldi or something.
It would last for 8 years and then merge with Loblaws.
Yeah. Like I was talking to Maguziak about this like a week ago, our friend Steven Maguziak, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, they could use all the abandoned Target locations that we have in Canada still, in all the all we have across the country.
Yeah.
But like it's not a great business opportunity to parachute into Canada, because I think a lot of the market is kind of squared away. These companies don't leave a lot of breathing room for the smaller guys to begin with. So like, I don't know how you would start from scratch and see any sort of success in the first, or at least in the short term, right?
Yeah, I don't think there's a neoliberal solution to this. I don't think there's like a capitalist solution. We're not going to dig our way out of the hole here, you know.
No, but we're all we got are shovels, apparently. You know,
we got our shovels. You know,
it's incredibly annoying seeing how unimaginative our the people at the levers are in this country, because it's like, we can add another company, or we could ask these grocers to be nicer, and it's like they're never gonna like switch the carrot out with the stick for these companies that are kind of screwing us over. And they're never going to do something cool like taking a smaller chain that just isn't doing so well and nationalizing it, and then using those profits to then cover food programs in the North or something that is actually quite useful.
Oh yeah.
Like, there's no room for ideas.
No, well, because liberals, the Trudeau administration is famous for its shiftlessness, and I mean, all the liberal administrations are famous for their shiftlessness and their really inability to, I mean, I think the 90s liberals under Chrétien were like, they didn't get a lot done, but they got more done than this, right? I'm not misremembering that, right? That's like, and they sucked. They weren't good, but they were at least, they had the illusion of effectuality more so than the Trudeau liberals,
Yeah, I mean, they cut a lot of social housing, but they also, they had actual geopolitics. They kept us out of the Iraq War. And it's like, I mean, this government is playing like a game. They're like just frozen solid, and they're going to be that way until they lose.
They don't know what to do. They just are like, until it's too late, and you've invited a Nazi into parliament. And
they've been doing this since the last election, which they ran because they thought they would get a majority and would be able to continue to do nothing.
Yeah.
Right. Because I mean, Trudeau hasn't really been doing the job since like early 2021. Remember when he used to do those like weekly press conferences outside his house?
Yeah, because everyone loved him because he's so handsome and new, and it's better than Harper, I suppose. Which it still is better than Harper, but it's awful. It's
a low fucking bar, right? Like. And I know everybody likes to shit on the NDP, which is the Progressive Party out here in Canada. Everybody likes to be like, yeah, these people are addicted to losing. At the very least, their leader has put forward the idea of price caps on food staples. At the very least, he's saying something that isn't pro-business for once. Like, it's, I appreciate that there's someone saying that stuff, but it's like, it's a little late.
Yeah. I mean, that's the other thing they criticize NDP for, is it's just the PR wing of the liberals. It's like they get to say that so that, the liberals can, well, look, we have a party that says that, so it's fine. But most people still don't agree because we're the, so. And I don't think Jagmeet Singh thinks like that. I'm not as angry at the guy as most. I think, if you're always going to be hampered within an electoral system. You're always, especially our stupid electoral system. So where the liberals are just guaranteed an outsized amount of power no matter what.
Yeah.
So,
and like I don't know, like I don't want to give them too much credit because it's like it's very easy to say things. It's much different to actually do stuff. I mean, that dental plan that they've been talking about, what a great victory it's been. I think only like 200,000 people have gotten access to it.
Dental plan.
Yeah, Lisa needs braces.
Lisa does need braces. We need, I mean, this food thing is relevant too, because it's like we talk about how the liberals are failing at the most basic literal thing, housing and food. They're failing at the things that people need most, which is like that. And you are going to lose to one of the least inspiring candidates of all time, because, we're having a federal election coming up, and it's looking like the conservatives are probably, they have a good shot, better than the previous couple of elections. And it's scary.
They're going to moonwalk. Yeah. They're going to moonwalk to a majority. And it's like, you're right. like the simplest things aren't being covered by our political class. Like, and part of that I think is that they don't see the need for them. Like they don't see the crushing weight of existence that is being in Canada in 2024. I don't think they get it.
Yeah.
Like
I think they are. I think no, it's true. I think they are literally out of touch. I think these people that do live in this elite world, you know, they have this idea that they know what the average person thinks or believes, or the pressure or anxiety they're under. But the thing is, they're all rich. They've been in this elite class bubble for a while, especially if you have that sort of like NAFO, like high level, like this is how the world really works, kids. Sometimes you got to break a few eggs, but everything ends up working better with like this utilitarian process that I, the economics genius, invented. Because it's like you said, it's like he's a macro guy, Sylvain Charlebois. It's always about the idea that I'm above it all and looking at it on this high-minded platform, which is like I'm a god and I can ignore suffering, right? I can ignore suffering because it's supposed to look like this, which is the idea that you're constantly reinforcing. It's okay to hurt people because that's what a regulatory system is supposed to look like. That's what supply and demand looks like, is people getting hurt on the ground.
Yeah.
And that's fine because the status quo must be maintained.
Yeah, and that, I mean, that is like an incredibly fucked up thing, right? Like food is about people, right? Affordability is about people. Like I am going to say something that will make I don't know, people that like to think of themselves as systems guys very upset. But the macroeconomic view on food does not fucking matter. Like it's the kids that aren't getting lunches that matter. Sorry. Like you can cry about the line going down all day, but like the thing that matters is food security, right? Like
line should go down if kids are starving. If line going up makes kids starve, line should not go up. What are you doing?
Yes. Yeah, it seems very simple, but like I think when people get into like that, I'm just trying to be pragmatic, I just want to talk about systems, it's because they're trying to avoid the really grim reality that homelessness is like skyrocketing in this country. There's 10 cities all across North America. People can't afford housing, people can't afford food, people are making very difficult choices, and it's like, well, you know, we're just looking at the system, and it's like that's cowardly in my opinion.
It's because it's I mean, it's to me the heart of neoliberal fascism. And I do believe that, you know, as I've thought more and more about it, you know, you don't have to co-sign this, Eric, but I do think, and obviously, like neoliberal democracy and fascism are very different. I'm not under the impression that they are the same thing, but I do think that neoliberalism undoubtedly results in a lot of bodies. It results in a lot of death, you know, over a longer period of time, but, you know, comparable to the amount of bodies that fascism induces. It is this gigantic mammon thresher machine that takes up impoverished people and, you know, spits out their labor and wealth behind it, right? And it does so. The reason why people are able to ignore the violence so easily, as we do in Canada, we're able to, is because of what do I think is the quintessential neoliberal phenomena of the shell company. As long as you just put a middleman in between you and the chaos you're causing, you don't have to see it, you know, as long as there is like, or, you know, and that's how a lot of these like tax evasion schemes work, is it's just, you know, a shell company of a shell company of a shell company. People just won't investigate that much as long as you just keep putting little blinders between you and the problems that you're causing. And I think most people are taught to think that way in this society, you know, very zone of interesty, literally just walls. It's fine to have the walls blinding us to the suffering. That's the way the system works, you know?
Yeah. Like I've had conversations with people that work for large banks or work for mining interests, and you know, they're like, I think the impression they gave me was that this is what grown-ups do. You know, you just don't think about it, you just work, right? Like we're all part of the machine, we're all causing the problem. It's like, I'm not. I edit podcasts.
Yeah, I am part of the machine. You know, my podcaster use Amazon Web Services, which are evil. You know, we're all part of the evil superstructure, right? But you should feel bad about it. You should try and do something about it a little. You know, maybe I don't do enough about it. I'm a big hypocrite when it comes to it, for sure. But it's just like, at least feeling bad about it is a start. You know. And the thing is, you do. I think everybody does feel bad about it. Everybody does know they're complicit in suffering. And that's why everyone, you know, that contributes to that alienation everyone faces, that sense that, you know, the luxury that you experience every day in the West is tainted because you know it's ill-gotten. Of course, you know that. Deep in your heart, whether you acknowledge it or true, you know that the life that you're living right now, even as a poor person or a middle-class person in the left, the cell phone that you have is as a result of unimaginable suffering that you can't even begin to think of living that life of like a child artisanal miner in the DRC. You know, you can't even, like,
in a factory that has like nets around it because people keep jumping off because, you know, Samsung isn't paying a specific amount. Or was that an iPhone factory?
That was Foxconn. That was Foxconn in China. And I don't know if if the suicide nets are a thing anymore. But yeah, factory, you know, there are types of labor out there that, and I'm not talking about everyone in the West, obviously. I don't know how many people are listening to the podcast probably have like fucked up jobs at industrial laundries. There are plenty of people here that are living, you know, these exploited lifestyles. But that's what's fucked up too. Even you are somehow complicit. Even you, who is not seeing a shred or a penny of this wealth, are still somehow complicit in the suffering because you just live in this awful society, you know, and that's how I feel. You're not bad for doing it because you're just forced to do it. And by entropy, not by entropy, by force of just momentum, you keep doing it. As I do, as we're both doing. We're making a podcast. Nothing more bourgeois and Western and stupid than making a podcast right now. But, you know, that's the reality you face. And it's like, you can hold two ideas in your head, too. You can be like, I try and do right and be good and, you know, in general. But also like, yeah, you are a piece of shit for participating in this, you know, thing which undermines the most vulnerable among us. Right? Right?
Mm-hmm. I think so. I think so. And like, I don't know, just to be fair to those people, I'm sure that like the reasons that people take those jobs, I mean, beyond, you know, wanting a big shiny car and a big fancy house, which you can't afford in this country, is because they have responsibilities to people and they want to look after them. Right.
Sure.
Like,
yeah, of course. You got it.
I think, and, you know, correct me if you think this is wrong, I think things should not be this hard.
Yeah, it seems a little much. You know, it's like, what are we trying to go back to feudalism here? You know, I mean, I think it's too, like, we grew up in the 90s in middle class families. We had a taste of it doesn't have to be this hard because our parents did not have it this hard. I remember them not having it this hard. So it's like, it's hard for me to like, I've already had a taste of the good thing. You know, I feel like we can get back some of it, right? You know, we can get back less bread, but I don't know. We haven't even gotten to the thing. The other reason why we're talking about the food professor is because he made a tweet recently, a really interesting tweet that I thought was sort of indicative of the whole thing. So I'm going to read it right. I have it pulled up right here. But yeah, the food professor, the Food Gooner, Sylvain Charlebois said, "I've been an unpaid columnist for the Toronto Sun for a year now. While I don't always concur with everything they publish, I deeply appreciate their editorial approach. Unlike other outlets, they never alter a single word of my op-eds. For that, I am sincerely grateful." So this is bad. This is really bad. Journalist malpractice. You should edit op-eds, you know.
Well, I mean, the phrase editorial approach is doing a lot of heavy lifting there. If like their approach is not doing anything, like that is, what a fucking joke, Alex.
So I'm no journalist, Eric, but you've been to J school. You've been around the block. Is this like a normal thing in journalism for editors to not edit any op-ed whatsoever? No, this is like this is wild, right? So Sylvain, I think, is trying to be complimentary, but this is like an absolute torpedo for a very
stupid newspaper's reputation. Like the Toronto Sun, like to anybody who like works in the field, is not to be taken seriously.
Yeah, they're like the New York Post or any of the Sun newspapers in England. You know, very Fox News-ish, very News Corp style stuff.
Yeah, they spend a lot of money on their like opinion columnists. One of which is dating the press secretary for the premier here in Ontario. Like it's a goofy newspaper. No one takes it seriously. But that's why they are not paying a professor who has one idea to talk about food. Like Sylvain is like not a great person to have as a columnist. And he's just being given like a sandbox to play in. He just gets to write stuff and it's not touched. Which is, I mean, journalistic malpractice, as you said, right? Like to just openly publish whatever someone has to say in your paper is like a complete abdication of responsibility to your readers. And I'm sure like the Sun has editors that have complete disdain for the readers of the product because it's been shit since it started. I have heard stories that they actually had reporters at one point that weren't bad. One of my teachers was a crime reporter at the Sun, and I have nothing but respect for him. Good union man. But like, this is such a layered tweet from Sylvain. So many things happening in it that I find fascinating because like he should be paid for his work. The first line, unpaid columnist. You're a professional. Like you should be. Why unpaid? So like right off the top, it's a great start. Like unpaid. Why? Like why write for them for free? Like no one. I don't know. I mean, the answer is he's that hungry for exposure.
Is that he's just willing to, and he knows it's a big outlet, so he's willing to be an intern for the Toronto Sun. Something he shares with Jeremy. Also, actually, Jeremy got paid, so it's like Jeremy actually got paid from the Sun. So,
well, like, because the Sun is a union shop.
Yeah, right? Hilariously enough, yeah.
Yeah, it was funny. I brought that up, and one guy's just like, actually, I helped unionize that. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. We should talk sometime. He was an arts critic for the Sun at one point. But funny. like it's like, and like for anybody who doesn't know about the Toronto Sun, it's like a deeply anti-union paper, right? It is itself unionized, which is like why reporters could actually make a living working for the Toronto Sun now. It's okay. They're getting free labor from a professor who harasses people on the internet.
Okay. Second line. Well, I don't always concur with everything they publish. So he starts out by saying that he's ideologically against this newspaper. Like he has to filter it out. He doesn't even he's so mealy-mouthed that he has to walk back the support that he's getting from them, which is like, at least admit you're right wing, you idiot, you asshole. At least
well, he's like explicitly right wing. Like the stuff that he shares on his Twitter account. Like I'm glad that Elon hasn't hid reposts, because then I wouldn't get that fun thing where he shared that guy threatening violence against Andrew Leach.
Yes,
like that, which is like the food professor's shares are pretty wild. But like, okay, so you don't always concur with everything they publish. Great. What stuff? Like what?
What do you mean? Like the anti-abortion stuff, or like the anti-gay stuff, the anti-trans stuff? Which
Islamophobia?
Yeah, all of that stuff. That's not you. I'm just a food professor. I don't know. Do queers eat food? Do trans women eat food? I do not understand.
Yeah, they should shop at Loblaws.
Do Muslims eat food? I don't know. Is it halal? The supply chain is bad for halal food.
Yeah. But like this is like a complete torpedo of a backhanded compliment, right? Like, because like he follows up with, I don't always concur, but I love their editorial approach, which he then explains
is not.
Don't even run it through a spell check. You know what I mean? Not a single word of my op-eds. And like that is, I think this is very illustrative. Like it's like very informative on like who Sylvain is, I think. Because like every journalist, every professional writer needs an editor.
Yeah.
Everybody needs one. The best writer has an editor. Your ideas aren't perfect.
Yeah.
They need to be edited before the public consumes it, because you might say the wrong thing. You might say things that could be misconstrued. He doesn't think that, I guess.
He is perfect. I am perfect. I am the food professor. You know, I have gone to food from Marrakesh to London. You know, I have gooned my way across the world.
I guess he thinks he's the food genius, but I mean, someone else calls me the food genius. So
yeah, I think you're the food genius here. Let's go through some more Sylvain hits. Do you have any more Sylvain hits pulled up? I know you had one other tweet that was pretty indicative of the psychosis of this gentleman.
Oh no, I think I already shared that one. I already shared that one. Sorry. There was a piece.
Yeah.
Like added on to this. One of the responses he got was from a guy named Bill, who's like, "Are you saying the other outlets alter your columns?" And then the food professor's like, "Always." And then Bill was like, "Care to name them?" There's like this like conspiracy that these newspapers are editing the words that they are liable for.
Yes.
Like after they publish them.
Yeah.
It's shocking to me. But yeah, if you want to catch anything the food professor says or does, I mean, just turn on the TV and you'll find him, as long as there's a food related story in this country. It's wild.
Yeah, it is. It's also, you know, talk about the wider journalistic malpractice of just no one at any major Canadian outlet is questioning this guy's credentials or his ability, or, you know, I mean, just that taking money from Galen Weston thing should have completely undid him. It's like, oh, this guy can't be taken seriously. He's in the pocket of, he clearly is like willing to do these conflict of interest things. You know, it's well, like,
and like the lack of disclosure is the thing that bothers me specifically. Like as someone who went through journalism school, you're taught to like not even take coffee from people, you know, like you don't want to be beholden to anybody. The general consensus in media is, I mean, you can take a fucking coffee, but like it's one of those things where like if someone has given you money, you probably are not able to report on them properly. There's different rules for journalists and pundits, I think. But I think the rules stay the same when, you know, like just in terms of like, why should we trust you? Right. Yeah. Like I don't want to hold Sylvain Charlebois to the same standards that I'd hold actual reporters, because he's not that. Yeah, like he's a talking head with like 3 ideas.
But he is also a PhD. He is someone that represents some sort of institutional, you know, he teaches at a renowned institution. I mean, he also reminds me of when I went to law school, there was this fella called Bruce Party, who was Jordan Peterson's legal guy. He was always like giving the constitutional or legal justifications for why it's okay to, or why, you know, adding gender expression to the human rights code was a bad idea or whatever. And this guy is an utter fucking hack who should not be taken seriously. And, you know, I've made fun of him on your show before. You know, he was like, I think he had to rate my professor's rating of something like, yeah, this guy started off his class was like, don't worry, this might trigger you or something like that. You know, a real just obvious self-evident shithead. You know, and that's what we're dealing. But actually, Bruce Party is another good example, because like Food Gooner, he's like classically handsome and articulate and has like this almost media training or theater training that allows him to get away with saying terrible things, but has this base sheen of superficial charisma.
Yeah. And again, like a right wing heterodox thinker, right? Like he likes to think of himself as like, I'm being counterculture by having these deeply conservative beliefs. Yeah,
like
right?
John Stossel or something like that, or like Penn and Teller's bullshit, that classic. Oh, you know, this thing that is actually very status quo. It's counterintuitive, actually. You know, counterintuitively, corporations are good. What?
Yeah, it's punk rock to love statues, right? Like it's that bullshit. I think Party's like part of like that little like right wing think tank brigade. He ends up like getting published in specific places and just saying the exact same things everybody else is saying. You know, we can say whatever we want, and you know, free speech on campus is the only thing that actually matters. Not that kind of free speech, not the you know Palestinian protesters setting up encampments, because that's, you know,
well, they're terrorists, you know, that's terrorism. But you know, the
that's
one
different.
where you get to, you know, the one where you get to misgender somebody until they commit suicide, that's like the one. That's the one we can.
Yeah, that's the one that's academic freedom.
Yeah, they will say that doesn't happen. Yeah, they will say, you know, I mean, there's been some horrible stuff coming out of the UK about wait lists, and I don't want to. I'm not gonna. That's a different episode. We'll talk about that in a different episode. But you know, I mean, that's all part and parcel because of the liberals' inability to do anything about food stuff. We're seeing like Danielle Ryan out in Alberta. We're seeing Poilievre hammer this culture war stuff in a way that is very alien to Canada, but is very troubling that it's more popular than ever, because famously Harper lost on culture war, you know, fucking Scheer lost on culture war, but now it's finally taken root because, you know, the clown fascism has fully bloomed in Canada. And, you know, when last time Jeremy was on, we talked about how Jason Kenney was basically the harbinger of that and how he was the bridge between Canada's Harper-esque noblesse oblige versus, you know, our new era of Poilievre clown fascism. And this can be blamed directly on the hubris and failure of the liberals and their support that comes from guys like Sylvain Charlebois.
Well, it is like people like Danielle Smith winning elections, you know.
I called her Danielle Ryan. Who's Danielle Ryan? I said Danielle Smith.
Yeah, I knew you meant Danielle Smith.
Danielle Smith. Danielle Ryan, someone else. Danielle Smith, yeah.
Yeah,
in Alberta,
she's like a former cigarette lobbyist who seems to be playing fast and loose with the evangelical crowd out there, which is always a great thing for human rights. You know, always fantastic. You know, hearing stuff coming out of Alberta.
There's one group that's been on the forefront of human rights. It's Alberta evangelicals. You know.
It's really, really good. I hear a lot about like how, you know, harm reduction techniques in Alberta for, you know, safe supply, just like getting people access to drugs that aren't poison. Yeah. Just like getting shut down in favor of like abstinence based treatment, which is killing people. Like that kind of stuff is just horrible. But I do think, like, to the main point that you had back there, the Liberal Party is to blame in a small way for this stuff. I think, you know, like material conditions have declined very hard, and all they had to do was start making moves that would improve our day-to-day life, or at least stop the bleeding. Yeah. Right. And it's like when your solutions are always like some sort of like public-private partnership that doesn't really do anything. If it's all like optics-based stuff, you know, tweeting things like that doesn't actually do stuff for me. Like if I'm in a spot where I can lose my apartment, you know, if the next paycheck doesn't come through, I don't really give a shit about what you're tweeting. And like that's fodder for, you know, a very specific right-wing type of populism, which takes the rage of the general populace feeling like things are worse than they were 8 years ago, and pushing it into just random hatred, random Islamophobia, random transphobia. It's just like, it's just such an easy win for them to do that. Polyev is like the Canada is broken guy. All he talks about is how Canada is broken. He has zero ideas how to fix it.
Well, at least their solution is to blame Muslims. It's Muslims' fault. It's like it's trans people's fault that you feel this way, which is something when people ask liberals, why is shit so bad? They're like, I don't know. Or it's supposed to be this bad. Like Food Gooner says, like goddamn Food Gooner says, it's supposed to be this bad. At least, you know, the conservatives are like, it's this bad because of minority. That's an answer, you know, the wrong one. It's bad, but it's more substantial than it's just supposed to be like this, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, it's not supposed to be like this, right? Like the answer is that our economic system is built to marginalize people and extract value from them, right? Like the problem, and I don't want to sound too much like I'm smoking a bong in a garage.
El problema es capitalismo. El problema es capitalismo. Yeah.
Thank you very much for saying it that way. Yeah. Like the problem is capitalism. Yeah. Like these businesses that have just a stranglehold on specific industries are taking what they can, and the country is just kind of watching because they're so afraid of being called communists. Yeah. They're so afraid of it. And it's like things are going to get worse, and then we're going to get a guy who's going to make things even worse.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it's one of those things where it's like we're going to hope that things get better, but if things get better while he's in power, we're going to be stuck with him for 8 years like we were with Harvard, right? Like there's no winning.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing is that it's hard to provide an electoral bulwark to food and real estate. The reason like food is because all of your campaign money is coming from those industries. You know, it's like, how can you say no when all of your cash is coming from those guys? You know, from real estate and the grocery industry, right?
Yeah,
what can you do?
There's like a really weird thing that I was looking into it just on the briefing notes on which execs were going to the grocery summit back in September, and I'd say about half of them had either made a donation to the Liberal Party or the Conservative Party. In the last, little bit they showed up in the database of donors. I thought that was quite interesting. I think, like we are kind of in it for a while now. Like, like with the Liberal Party or with the Conservative Party, like we're going to get the same stuff. Yeah. We're going to get a different package. We're going to get like anti-woke Justin Trudeau, which sounds like specifically awful.
I mean, I hope the saving grace of Poilievre will be the same as Trump, which is that he will be too incompetent to actually get anything done. He'll be like the Liberals. He'll be the same type of shiftless, where it's just nothing will happen. So that is my hope. That is my greatest hope, is that just total ineffectuality, which seems likely.
Yeah. Like he doesn't have like a great track record as a minister, but like he seems to me like a guy that just really wants to be prime minister super duper badly, and he's just gonna do what he can to get there. He is kind of oafish. Like I will say that like that's where my hope is gonna come from. Like I don't know if you saw that one series of images where he's trying to pay for a shawarma with Bitcoin.
He's like Javier Milei, actually. I think he's the most comparable to Argentina's Javier Milei in terms of expression and like general goofiness and like insistence on like bizarre anarcho-capitalist devices, because he's that type of guy.
Yeah, it's like a very specific kind of insufferable guy that we have up here in Canada, actually. The business bro archetype up here is like a specific kind of gross. Like they'll work for like some sort of finance corporation or like a crypto play or a mining company. All of those wonderful things,
or a food data compilation firm, something that the Food Genius versus the Food Gooner. I guess the Food Gooner has a food data compilation firm, right?
Yeah, it's quite well regarded. It comes up with a report every year. People use it. It makes the news every single year. It's no Hoser grocery tracker, but I think we're doing different things. If we're being honest, I think I'm doing a different thing. I'm focusing on like, trying to find people cheaper food. That's all that really matters to me. It's like, is there a spot here in the city that like we can shave off a couple bucks from our grocery budgets? Yeah. I don't want to, pretend like that's going to be the difference between someone keeping their apartment or not. But it's like, it's not going to hurt.
Something. You feel, you participate in the study, you felt shame, you did a little something about it. That's what you got to do.
Yeah. And I found a way of getting paid while doing it, which is like quite nice.
It's a dream.
Doesn't, it's not a particularly lucrative business. Scraping prices and collecting them and putting them on a website, but we're doing what we can.
It's not as lucrative as writing unpaid columns for the Toronto Sun, that's for sure.
Why is he doing that?
Because he just wants the fame. He just wants to be loved. He really just wants to be super loved, and I mean, on that level, I guess I can relate.
Yeah, I think so. This is like a sad note to leave Sylvain
No,
on.
yeah. Well, no, I think that's it. I think it is this guy, if we just want to talk about the psychology of it, he does seem desperate for approval. He does seem like I'll do anything, I'll be anything just so long as, you approve of me. And there are lots of people that I feel that a lot of liberals carry themselves in this way, the sort of like desperate for approval from authority type of thing. And, I see that in myself, and it's something that I want to excise. But some people like it a lot. Some people go into it, and I don't know what animates that. But Eric, what are your plugs? Eric, tell us about what you do.
All right, so we brought it up a couple times, but on this show, we brought it up at least. I am a data journalist on a project called the Hoser Grocery Tracker. You can check that out. It's hosergrocerytracker.ca. If you live in Toronto and you live around the Kensington Market or Chinatown area, we're actually collecting prices from stores manually these days, and we're trying to build a little data set of food staple prices in locally owned stores without websites. So if you have any interest in that, head over to hosergrocerytracker.ca. There's a little form you can use to sign up to be in the next training session. Beyond that, I do a podcast with my buddies called Big Shiny Takes, where we read the worst columns we can find in Canadian newspapers. I'm assuming we're going to get a Sylvain Charlebois piece one of these days. It's gonna be amazing. Hopefully it's one that he gets paid for. But check that out. Alex has been on many times. It's a specific columnist. It's a ton of fun.
Yeah, a lot of it, Adam Zivo. If you get another choice Zivo, have me on. I really despise that guy.
He was his work was used in a peer-reviewed journal talking about misinformation about safe supply.
Oh my god, he's like academically a bad journalist.
Yeah, and there's like another controversy this morning about some headline needing to be changed for his story because it was like misrepresented the truth. Apparently,
yeah, I fucking Ziva. I have no love in my heart for gay turncoats and queer turncoats, and it's a queer that publishes negative stuff about. And specifically, he's on a real anti-trans beat too, so it's like. Yeah, he's got to go. He has have me on for him if you get another choice Zivo. If you get a transphobic Zivo, yeah, get me on for one of those.
100%. I think there has been a couple of those. He's also on like this really big anti-safe supply kick. He was weird. Yeah, he's such a loser.
Just the worst. Yeah, just the absolute like dog shit human being. On the level of yeah.
And he's not a journalist. Like he's just not. Like,
he's just a guy who will say anything. He's just a mercenary. That makes him sound too cool. A shit mercenary, a goon mercenary. He's a gooner. He's
a gooner as well.
Adam Zivo is the column gooner. Yeah.
He did this one piece called it was like encampment evictions are a victory for the working class. And like this was back in the early pandemic when there were encampments all over the city, which the city then sent police and private security to kick the shit out of everybody there. And in the column, I think Zivo interviewed 3 people. One was the manager of the community center. The encampment was outside. One was like a lawyer. Near Moss Park, and I can't remember who the third one was. It might have just been the 2 people, but it was just like you didn't talk to any working class people. You talked to people that were directly affected negatively, and then a lawyer. Like what?
He's not very good at his job is the thing, but he's craven, so he's gonna get paid and he can string a sentence together. Not that well. But yeah, this choice Zivo riff going off on some late episode Zivo snipe that we're having.
Yeah, I'm so glad we brought up
Zivo. I fucking Zivo. I hate him so much. Oh my god,
There was one episode where like you were on it, and it was Zivo's big argument that there should be cops at Pride.
Yeah. Oh,
and then he kept like listing all the arguments against having cops at Pride, and then at the end of it, he's like, "Well, like fuck all that shit," Like,
yeah, he kept misrepresenting. He gave way more reasons cops shouldn't be at Pride than cops should be at Pride. Yeah, he's not good at what he does. But that's okay, At any rate, thank you for listening, everyone. Eric, it's great to have you on. Thank you for doing the food tracking prices. I really appreciate it. Everyone should get madder about food. We should all organize. I mean, I don't do that, but you should. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye, Alex. Thanks so much.
Take care.
House of Decline is brought to you by members of our $10 Patreon tier. These include Big Fan of Noise, Cher, Cole Froling, Constantine Bristow, Daniel Stern, Dr. Spichemin Zero, Dustin Koski, Emma, Esty, Eze the Igwe, Fell, Fiat Lux, Grant Williams, Jody Shen, Jordan Rabe, Keaton Livingston, Kevin Ott, Kimberly Latrun, Karibo Shu, Liz Heckmayer, Miles Forrester, Mousy, Natalie Wilson, Niraj Kumar, Patrick Sullivan, Peter Ramin, Samara Larkin, Stephen Pikelny, Tor, and Trunkles. Thank you so much for your support. It is vastly appreciated, and you are all very wonderful.